Now friends, we have seen what self-disclosure is. Now it is very important for us to use an appropriate self-disclosure. So if you want to use a correct self-disclosure, the first thing is that you must know what are the different types of self-disclosure. So first let us have a look at types of self-disclosure. Let us look at the learning objectives first. The learning objectives of this session are to identify the types of self-disclosure, to acquire skills of self-disclosure, and lastly the most important one is you have to use self-disclosure in the counseling process. Now let us have a look at types of self-disclosure. So we can just have a look over here. The self-disclosure types are deliberate, second one is unavoidable self-disclosure, then you have accidental self-disclosure, client initiated self-disclosure, and inappropriate self-disclosure. So in this part of the video, we are going to see all these types in detail. Now the first one is deliberate, or we are calling it as deliberate self-disclosure. In this, there are two important things, that is the counselor is self-revealing or the counselor is self-involving. Now what is the difference between self-revealing and self-involving? So the former, that is the first one, self-revealing, in self-revealing the therapist reveals something about themselves. That is, here the therapist is going to talk something about his life, he is going to share some personal information, but that is extra session material, that is he may use it in between the session, but it is an extra information that he is going to share with the client. In self-involving, the therapist's personal experiences and reaction to the client, which normally takes place during the session. Now self-revealing and self-involving are two different things. In self-revealing, the counselor is revealing something about himself. It may or may not be very relevant to the client's problem, but self-involving, the therapist is very careful and he will reveal only that information which is useful for the client and which is going to be related to the client's problem. So this is called as deliberate self-disclosure. That is, deliberate self-disclosure is decided by the counselor. That is, he decides whether he has to reveal the information or not and how much. So this is an important type of self-disclosure. The second type of self-disclosure is unavoidable or non-deliberate, which is exactly opposite of deliberate self-disclosure. Now as the name suggests, see, it is unavoidable or non-deliberate. That is, this kind of self-disclosure is not initiated by the counselor. It is not the counselor who has decided to self-disclose, but due to some unavoidable circumstances, there are lot of information, or there is lot of information that is being projected, or there is lot of information that is being collected by the client. Now how can he collect this information by unavoidable situation? Let us see that. First thing is by the neighborhood. So suppose you are practicing at home, or you have a clinic or a counseling office which is at home. So the time when the client comes to your office, in between he gathers lot of information about you. The moment he reaches your office, first of all he will have a look at the locality, he will see the area where you are residing, then he will look the way the office is being kept up, he will look at the surroundings, and then he starts gathering all the information from there. Secondly, he collects lot of information about your family connections. Suppose there is a family photograph in your room, he will start gathering information from there. Wedding rings, in case of our Indian culture, if it is a female, then there are certain signs. He may look at the Mangal Sutra, he may see at some other information through which, some other signs or symbols through which he can gather information about the counselor. Many a times he also gathers lot of information by looking at you, that is your age, your gender, your body shape. So what is the age of the counselor? So if the counselor is young or he is aged, the client starts guessing things about you, and he gathers lot of information, and this is something where you disclose things about yourself, but this is unavoidably, it is not in your control. So he tries to get lot of information about you. From the body shape, that is whether you are obese or you are not obese, he can guess things about your eating habits. Suppose the counselor is obese and he is going to talk about a weight loss program to the client will already have some preconceived notions about the counselor. Next thing is also the manner of your dress, that is your dressing sense. So many a times we have discussed about this, friends, that is, as a counselor you have to be very careful about your dressing sense. This happens with the case of we teachers also. Like when we are entering a class, we have to know very well what kind of dress we are wearing. I have given this example in the class also. That is, I had one of my friends who ran a boutique, and so many a time she kept telling me that, see, this is the latest trend, this is the latest fashion, and while stitching dresses she used to tell me that why don't you stitch like that and why don't you stitch in that particular manner. So I always told her that, see, wherever you have written the measurements, in double quotes kindly write down that I am a teacher, I am a lecturer, and so we have to follow a definite dress code. And so what kind of dress we are wearing, what are the colors that we are wearing, all this is something very important, and the client collects lot of information about us by looking at all these things. Not only this, friends, even how the therapist speaks, your language, your intonation, your vocabulary, what you're using, your accent. Like usually it happens with us whenever we talk to people, like somebody asks you your name. It is very common tendency here, and we all have faced this. The moment you will utter your name, they ask you, मग तुम्ही पाटील ना, मग तुम्ही कुठले, तुम्ही देशमुख ना, तुम्ही कुठले, तुम्ही ह्या गावाचे, तुम्ही त्या गावाचे. That means the moment you utter your name, the moment you utter your surname, people will start gathering information about you, and then they are like, okay, you're from the same place from where I am, and these kind of things happen. So what you are speaking, what is your accent. So number of times I have told that whenever I used to speak earlier, people were like, okay, your name is so and so, but your accent is so. So madam, are you Bengali, are you South Indian, are you Maharashtrian, are you non-Maharashtrian? These kind of things starts happening, and this happens with our client also. How you walk, whether you are walking in a very lethargic manner, whether you walk very actively, the way you present yourself, all this has a profound impression on the client, and this is all the information that he is gathering about you. Of course, this is not self-disclosure, but it comes under the category of unavoidable self-disclosure, wherein client gathers information about you due to unavoidable circumstances. Also, how you smell. Now, how you smell means it is not an awful smell, but what kind of deo you are wearing, what kind of perfume you are using, how much is the smell of that particular perfume. All these things are very important. Number of times it happens in the class, you have observed students among you. Sometimes you just recognize the presence, or you just know that so and so person has come to the college because you can just identify or detect the particular perfume of that person. So we have always been talking about manners, etiquettes, body language, and during all those sessions we have been talking that if you are using a particular deo, if you are using a particular perfume, you have to keep it to yourself, and all these things are important. Which perfume you are using, what are the choices of that particular brand, all this information the client is gathering from you, and this is called as unavoidable or non-deliberate self-disclosure. Then we have the third kind, that is called as accidental self-disclosure. Now it is similar to unavoidable one, but accidental is something which just happens on its own. Suppose you haven't slept last night, maybe you have a small baby at home and the baby was sick and has kept you awake the whole night, and you hadn't had your sleep. So sometimes in the counseling session you just yawn. So maybe this sends a message to the client that okay, you did not have your sleep. Sometimes you just go to a grocery store in your locality and suddenly you bump into your client and he is also there in the same grocery store, and then he understands that okay, you are in the same area, and he talks about things. Sometimes you join a new club, you join a new swimming class, or you go to a particular recreational center, and there you meet somebody who is your client, Maybe he is a member of that place, maybe he is working in that area, or sometimes he is the owner of that particular club. So you just accidentally meet the person and then information is shared. All these accidental self-disclosures are beyond the capacity of the therapist and he cannot control it and we cannot do anything about it. So life happens and this is something which accidentally the client simply knows about you. Then we have the fourth type. This is a very important type wherein it is the client's deliberate actions, or it is called as the client initiated. So here the client is very inquisitive about the counselor and now he is trying to gather information about you deliberately. That is, he is making conscious efforts to gather more and more information about you. Nowadays in this digital world, it is very simple to gather information about anyone. See, by virtue of searching the internet, you can gather information about anyone. So if you want to be very seclusive, if you want to be low profile and if you don't want to share more information about you, it is very important that what are the digital footprints that you are leaving on the way. So wherever you have surfed or wherever you have information about yourself, the client can try to gather that information. For example, suppose I am a college teacher and any student wants to gather more information about me. Forget about students. If I have an old friend and I have lost connection with that friend and somebody wants to gather information about me, they can very easily run through our college website. They will get my phone number. Sometimes they will get what position I am working in. With that they can come to my department. They will know where exactly I am working. Many a times we are sharing lot of information about ourselves on our profile. That is, what are the research I am doing, what are the projects I am doing, what is my area of interest. So if you just surf through the website, you will get all the information about me. So in this particular manner, the client also will consciously go and find more and more information about you. He will run through your social media pages and from there he will be able to find out your family tree, your family history, if there are some legal and criminal records, political affiliations. Many a times people share their DP with so and so person. They have gone and visited an inaugural function with some political party or some political leader and they share such information. All this information is very critical and your client will go through all this information and from there he will gather information about you as to what political affiliations you have and community and recreational involvement. All this is important. Anything that is posted about you on the internet, all this can be read by your client. So whether the information is true or false, whether the information is right or wrong, nobody knows about it. Anything that is written about you in the internet can be read by your client. And lastly, we have inappropriate, that is inappropriate disclosure, that is something which is not allowed, or inappropriate disclosures are such disclosures that one may not do. It is for the benefit of the therapist rather than the client. So sometimes what happens is we share some information but it is of no help to the client, rather it is consoling ourselves. For example, suppose you lost your mother or you lost your near and dear one and you had to attend a funeral, and because of this you have rescheduled your counseling session, and when you come back to the session you accidentally or you unconsciously tell the client that okay, I lost my mother and I had to go for the funeral, so I rescheduled the session. When you share this information is of no use to the client, but then he starts thinking about you and sometimes he starts consoling you. He starts thinking whether you really need some more time to attend this session. Sometimes he tries to console you. That is, he is burdened with the information for the therapist's needs and not for his own needs. Now some disclosures are more uniformly justifiable and therapeutically helpful. So friends, which disclosures are useful and which disclosures are not useful? This has to be decided by the counselor, and once he is aware of all the types of disclosures, he can use them adequately.